Wrestling fans, football season is just around the corner, which means wrestling season's next, which means it's time to place your custom team apparel orders at SpartanCombat.com. Go to SpartanCombat.com to order custom warm-ups, singlets, shorts, t-shirts, and wear the same gear that Kyle Dake, Yanni D, David Carr, and Kylie Welker wear. SpartanCombat.com.
That's what Ed brought to the room, right? Like, he couldn't turn it off, right? He was going to destroy whoever he had, and he just never backed down.
We can endure anything and adapt and pivot and change. Wrestling gave us that ability.
I would say nothing in life has impacted me more than the things wrestling has taught me in terms of self-reflection, resilience.
Toughness. Some guys have it, some guys don't.
Adversity, 100%. How to pick myself up and be a man after I failed.
And everything that has shaped my life and where I'm at today would not be there without the values and basically the lessons I've learned through the sport of wrestling.
For me, wrestling saved my life because it allowed me to focus and channel my energy.
We're fortunate if you wrestled, because if you wrestled, natural talent helps, but it's 5% of the ingredient. It pales in comparison to heart and technique and effort.
It humbled me, taught me humility. Nothing can humble you more than wrestling. I think it's the learning to adapt, right? You learn how to adapt, you learn how to solve problems.
You know, if I look back at my time I spent wrestling, if it gave me one thing more than anything else, it's mental toughness.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Wrestling Changed My Life podcast. This is your host, Ryan Warner. Our guest today is an Illinois legend, Jack Griffin, 1990 NCAA champ for Northwestern, two-time All-American. He was also a two-time Illinois state champ. After Northwestern, Jack went to wrestle at the Hawkeye Wrestling Club under Dan Gable. He has some great stories, and I loved having him on the podcast. Special thanks to Bill McKenna for making this happen. And also a special thanks to our fan of the week. This week it goes to Tebow's 1969 recent Apple podcast review. Hooked on this podcast. Can't believe I didn't start listening sooner. Thank you so much, Tebow's. We greatly appreciate it. And without further ado, let's get to the goods with Jack Griffin. All right, Jack Griffin, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Ryan. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, we're excited to have you. We love having Illinois guys on the show. There's no doubt I'm biased to the land of Lincoln, and you were a two-time Illinois state champ before going on to Northwestern. Man, before we get into your career, what do you think of the Northwestern Cats season this year, putting 10 at the big dance?
As you know, first time ever in our history, quite the impressive feat. They got a great group. Matt Storniolo's he's leading the pack and doing a heck of a job, and couldn't be more proud of where he's gone, right? Being an assistant coach up to assistant coach, or as the head coach, and it's just really doing a great job. And now a little bit of a rebuild with the coaching staff. We're excited about that and who he's bringing in and who he's brought in, and doing a great job. So it was, super excited. I didn't think Deacon was coming back. We thought it was like a 5% chance, 10% chance, already had a couple of degrees, ready to move on. And I don't know what changed his mind or who changed his mind, but after that devastating defeat in the semis the year before, for him to come back and win it all, what a treat, and couldn't happen to a better young man.
He seems like a guy that's just all around put together in everything he does.
100%.
And he just left for Stanford?
He did, yeah. I guess he's going to coach and train out there, and, probably time for a change. And I'm hopeful that he'll be able to get back to Chicago and train with our kids when he can as well. I would imagine that's still in play, or I'm hoping it is. And but good for him. Sometimes change is good, just like me when I went over to Iowa City for a couple of years.
Yeah, and it's like you look back at your Northwestern teams before you went to Iowa City, you guys got fourth one year, which is pretty remarkable. I mean, is that the highest Northwestern's ever finished? It
has, and I think I think 3 or 4 teams have done it now. That happened my senior year, and pretty cool. When I won in the finals, we leapfrogged Nebraska to take over 4th place. but Terry and Jason had a battle the next match. And if Jason won, they leapfrog us again. And then we're going to need Brad Traviola, my teammate, to beat Dan St. John. And thankfully, Terry did his job, and we retained the 4th place trophy. And that was just simply amazing, right? Team effort. I think we had 5 guys down there at the time, 4 All-Americans. And so not a bad run. Yeah.
Wow. Well, man, there's just so many good stories that we're going to talk about today, at all different levels of it. But let's just start back in the IKWF days. For folks who aren't from Illinois, that's the middle school circuit, highly competitive. Everyone knows what IKWF club you grew up wrestling on. So how'd you get involved with it, Coach?
Yeah, no, it's a fun story. And in fact, I just a couple years ago revisited with the guy that got me into wrestling, Mark Zader. We were at Palos West, grade school. His older brother's at Palos South Junior High, which was the club or the wrestling team name. And they needed lightweights, 60 pounds, right? And so Mark said he's going out for wrestling. And I had no clue what wrestling was. I had an older brother who ran. My dad played lights at basketball at St. Leo High School back in the day, but it was one of those things. Well, if Mark Zader's going to do it, another friend of ours, Kevin File, I'm like, well, then I'm going to do it, and joined the team. And I think ultimately, Ryan, the 2-3 years of pain, because I was not a natural. I was awful. I did remember I won my first ever exhibition match. Didn't win many more that year. In fact, I believe Mark Zader was the one who beat me out for the starting spot. And I would cry every time I lost, right? But I think, that perseverance, losing, getting a little bit better year to year really ended up being a great thing for me and get me to leapfrog. And ultimately, I just missed going down to Kid State in 7th grade. I lost to Danny O'Brien of the famous, O'Brien family with Mike and Tommy and him. And he was younger than me, right? So that hurt too. But then I made that big jump in 8th grade and made it to the state finals where I'll never forget his name. Scott Holbrook kind of owned me, rode legs. I couldn't get out. And I believe he was from Sterling Newman. And he went on to win 3 state championships in Class A. So great start to my career. Paul Balone was our head coach, a no nonsense guy, but when you're going to start off at a wrestling program, having a coach that knows what he's doing is quite helpful. And we had a nice little team back then. We were not a powerhouse like the Twisters or anything, but good enough, won our share. And it certainly was a great start for myself and my career.
What do you think changed between 7th grade and 8th grade?
Probably less thinking, right? I tell people, and this is going to sound funny. I think my secret sauce eventually was I didn't think, I just went out and wrestled. And I think that was part of it, right? That self-belief and just going out there and chasing it, I think, and just going, whether it was 6 minutes, 7 minutes, however long it took, I'm just going to go do my best and see what happens. So I think that was it for sure.
Yeah, it's so common with kids to just overthink it and get in their head before it starts.
100%, right? And I had my own battle with that post NCAA championship where I was losing to kids that I tech falled, and through the help of the sports psychologist at Iowa and just winning a big match again, I think that got me through it. But those struggles are real, and if you're in it, it's dark, and if you can get through it, it's amazing. And I was fortunate to get through that. So yeah, that's the biggest challenge is that 6 inches between your ears and even ugly wrestling ears. But if you can get that going, you're gonna go a long way.
So that happened to you after you'd won the NCAAs in 1990 when you were doing your freestyle career.
Yeah, it was, I don't know what that was, but all of a sudden I just, you lose one you don't think you should have, and then all of a sudden it's getting compounded. And I was just really struggling. And I'm forgetting his name, and what a great guy at Iowa. And I give Gable credit because Gable's like, he didn't need it, right? The Brands brothers didn't need it, but I was struggling, and he's like, hey, go see this guy. And I'm so sorry that I'm forgetting his name. Great man. But I kept saying, I stink, I can't, I suck. And, just classic character assassination. And he'd be like, what'd you say? I'm like, I don't stink. I made a mistake. I can fix the mistake, that type of mentality. And then, going back to the point where it switched again, I'm in the Ohio International Open, wrestling the Cuban. In fact, I think it was the one that Zeke had to beat in the second round of the Olympics, big match. I had beaten him, a couple months earlier, and wrestling him, great match, going back and forth. I'm down one. We lock up. I lateral drop him. We land on our sides, and he pops on top. And there I go. I'm like, are you kidding me? There we go again. I can't win the big one, And then my next match is against a guy from Turkey. Take him down, turn him. I'm like, okay, this is good. He takes me down, turns me. I'm like, okay. And I hit my headlock and I pin him. And I literally said, I'm back. And I went on. I took third. I beat Roselli, and Zeke, I think, won it. And just that was my springboard to, winning the U.S. Open later that next year or that year, and going from there. But it's just so funny. All the help in the world can't help you. You still need to win that big match. I think that just flips that script a little bit. And I was like, I'm back. And again, good to be on the right side of mentally strong.
It's crazy how many foreigners you guys had in tournaments back then in the U.S. Like a Turk, a Cuban at a tournament in Ohio. That's kind of crazy.
Right. Yeah. The Cuban was a USA Cuba duel up in, way up in Wisconsin. And it was just great to be a part of that, and a lot of fun. And that might've been, right there in 91, I think. So, but it was good. Yeah. Getting that experience is huge.
And you mentioned something that's interesting. You mentioned character assassination. Is that like a sports psychology term that you noticed you were falling into?
Yeah, the doc brought it up, right? And that was my classic thing. Instead of, hey, we hear a lot about it today. It's okay to fail and embrace failing. And it's so powerful. And it is, if you embrace it the right way. It's like, okay, what did I do wrong? Okay, I was out of my stance, or hey, I shot too far away, or whatever it might be. But yeah, that whole, I do it in golf all the time. I can't hit out of the sand, right? And I'm working on it. It's not getting much better, but it's that putting that barrier up on yourself. And if you can catch it and talk your way around it and make little corrections, you're on your way to getting better, right? In some way, shape, or form. So yeah, character assassination, I think, is what they call it. I don't know if there's a better term or not, but I was definitely attacking my character for sure.
I like that though. It's just a form. It's a way to kind of group anytime you're having negative self-talk.
Right. And sports, life, whatever, right? It's the mind is a terrible thing to waste.
It is. It's very fickle. It's a tricky thing, especially in sports. Yeah. It's like a little bit of a magnifying glass, but certainly it's all areas of life, business, relationships, whatever.
Right.
So you kind of, you're not dealing with some of these issues back in the great old IKWF days. And when you go to Palos Heights, being a little guy, did you start right away, or
at the high school?
Yeah.
Yeah, no. I went to Stagg High School, and let me correct that. I had 12 matches at the sophomore level as a freshman, won those. It's funny. Dave Anderson was my coach. Again, here I am going to another program with great coaches, great workout partners. This was a team that was going to actually eventually the next year win the first ever dual meet state championship. And
Stagg did.
Yeah, we are the first ones ever. And here's the crazy part, Ryan. We had those dual meets at the individual state tournament while the individual state tournament was going on.
What? Like in the afternoon or in the night session?
In the evening. Yeah,
okay.
When the individual session's done. And, in my opinion, I know it costs people, individual places. I know my buddy Kevin Walsh's older brother, Terry, just missed. And I think he knows extra matches, right? And you had to be up for it and the team. But anyway, going back, so I ultimately did, because Dave Anderson said one thing that haunts him is like, how I didn't start you the whole time. I don't know. Because I ended up being like 19-9 freshman year, made it to sectionals, didn't make it down, but getting your feet wet, being in that varsity room. I was always in the varsity room. And there was a lot of just great workout partners. I talked about the IO room, no place to hide. Well, as a freshman, there was no place to hide for me either. And I wrestled 98 pounds. And so I've beaten that, by the way. I'm a little heavier than that now. But it was a great start. And again, great teammates, and that common belief when you're all rolling in the right direction. And we knew big things were coming, because I think before I got there, they won the vast majority of their dual meets, and that continued. And so we were just starting to climb a little bit. So,
man, to be a team dual state champ is so rare. And the public schools,
you don't always see it. So like, who were you guys going up against to win the team states during that
Well,
era?
it's crazy if I remember it all, but let's go back to sectionals, right? Southside is the place where just the depth is just incredible, right? So we had to beat Marist, who was ranked 1 or 2, I think, in the team picture. We beat them first. Great duel. And I got accused of giving the finger to the crowd after I won my match. And I gave number 1. My dad would have killed me if I gave anyone the finger. But people are adamant that I gave the finger. I'm like, no way.
Those Marist fans are heated though. Some of those, some of those Oak Park Marist duels at Marist were ugly. And I'm sure they were just as passionate back in the 80s.
Yeah. Mark Gervais, who helped me a lot in my freestyle summers, and just a great rivalry, right? My cousin, Johnny Griffin, was on, was around on that team. And it's just, battles, right? And then, so you win that one, and is it later that night? Yeah, same day. We're wrestling Mount Carmel, who was, again, 1 or 2, right? And I don't know what we were ranked going into the state series, but then we knocked them off. And so then we go down, and I think the first match is against Conant, who is, predicted to beat us. And we beat them rather easily. And then I forget who the other one was. But ultimately, we got back to Glenbard North.
Oh my God.
That
what
was our rival.
Road.
They were a great team. And what a great duel meet. I mean, it was to the end. In fact, what's the 185-pounder Savignago? They put someone in at 185 for him to wrestle Don Schrader, who just won a state title earlier that day against the kid from St. Pat's. They battled like I think sectional and state finals, and it wasn't fair to Savignago. And he wrestled. He was a warrior, a tough kid, but Don was just too big and athletic, and took home the W. And when we won the first ever one, it was quite something. There's only one first, right? And that's the Stag Chargers, so it's pretty special.
Wow. And people say winning the team title that much more memorable. Maybe not more memorable than an individual, but in certain ways it can be.
100%, and along that team kind of line, Ryan, when I clinched it, people are like, oh, you must be so proud of your national championship. Sure. Right. Yeah. More proud that we took 4th, brought home a trophy. It's huge.
Oh my God. I mean, just to look at now how many great teams don't get to that 4th place trophy in today's team races. Sure. It was the same back then. And so I didn't realize how good the team was. So you're on a great team. And once you got to high school, were you big into like setting goals and like knowing where you wanted to go to get to that first state title?
I was sure I wanted to be a 4-timer, right? Who doesn't? It's a lot of this, but I wanted to be a state champ. I can't say I got deep into it, Ryan. I know we wanted to win the team title. I knew if things went well and I stayed healthy, I would have a shot, hopefully, at a state placing, a state championship. And sophomore year I made it down. I went 0-2 that year. That was my sophomore year when we won the overall team, but I won every match for my team. And disappointed, going 0-2 that year. I lost to a kid from Champaign Centennial, I think. And then I'm wrestling a freshman next match named Phil Johns, who I ended up wrestling 2 years later in the state championship my senior year. And so I think that was the motivation, right, to go, okay, I don't want to ever do that again, get down there and not win. And then just things started to blossom that junior year and that kind of stuff.
And so when you're down there as a sophomore, were the individual finals before or after the dual finals?
I believe that was first. And then I was like, it had to be. Yep. Yeah. Because Don won our heavyweight won a state championship. And so that was, think about that, right? You win your individual in a heck of a match, and now you have to, go and win another one for your team to win it all. It's the ultimate pressure, right? That night. I'm like,
the same day. That's
great
crazy.
Atmosphere though, right? I mean, the crowds, the people, the duel, the kids that are down there competing individually, the teams down there, and that atmosphere. It was nuts. It was nuts.
Wow. That's insane. I can't even imagine. It'd be better to have all the fans there because now the duel's the week after and there's not as many fans, but
right.
That would think about going from like the highest of high that having to refocus for a duel meet.
Right. Yeah. Like if you lost the state championship, now you're in the finals. Wrestling's like, are you there? Right. That's tough.
And so after you won your second state title, what were your plans for college and where you wanted to go?
Yeah, I took ultimately 3 recruiting trips. I knew I wanted to stay close to home, Ryan, being an Illinois boy. My mom and dad, my family are very close, just loved watching. I have a twin sister, my biggest fan, Joanne. And so, yeah, knowing that there is no professional wrestling for a 118 pounder, I went with the best education, right? So Northwestern ultimately won, but I visited Wisconsin, and Russ Hulkson was the coach there, and he's not there for my first day of my visit. I'm like, where's coach? And they're like, oh, he'll be back. You're meeting with him tomorrow morning for breakfast. I'm like, okay, great. Had a good time that night. Come back and I'm in his office, and I'm with a kid from Ohio getting recruited, and he's saying, oh boy, I just wish Hulkson was at Ohio State. I'd go there for sure. What's it? Monty Dagley, I think was the name. And I had breakfast, and coach goes, Jack, I'm going to Ohio State. I'm going to be the new coach there. Do you want to go with me? And I said, no. I didn't want to go that far, and I was just like, no, thank you, sir. And, that was the end of that. And then I also went to Indiana, which Metzler was the assistant coach. What's his name?
Jim Humphrey.
Yeah, Jim. So
what a
great
guy.
story with those guys. They're in my house, visit, and Humphrey's they got to meet someone else after from Illinois and to recruit. But we're showing technique, and Metzler's just like sweated through his dress shirt. My mom had to take his shirt and iron it for him and get him ready for the next home visit. So it's hard to say no to those guys. That was a great visit, great team. I knew they were. I mean, had I been on that team, I think they may have finished, in the top 5, 6, 7. Who knows what I would have done to help that team. But ultimately, no one, home's 35 miles away. Great education. I'm a first generation college kid.
Mm-hmm.
My mom and dad didn't go to college. Mom came to the United States at 17 from Ireland. And
really,
so, it was a big deal. Yeah, it was a big deal. So
what did your folks do?
Yeah, my dad was an operating engineer. He worked all over the place, ultimately a long time for the Chicago Board Options Exchange. And then mom, and raising 5 kids, stayed home for most, and then would, clean the local architectural business, doing the floors and the toilets, all that kind of stuff. And then ultimately she ended up being the cafeteria lady at my high school. So she'd get mad at me when I'd go through the cafeteria line and, instead of eating something good, I'd have like a chocolate little ice cream and a nutty bar. And she'd bring out vegetables. She's like, what are you doing? So I had to behave at my high school because I knew my mom was there. But just blue collar people. Right. And this opened the door for me. My twin ultimately went to a 4-year college, Joanne, to East Illinois. And then Kathy, Tommy, and Mary didn't go to college. Tommy ultimately did and became a nurse. He's just doing great. So proud of him. Probably the smartest guy in the family. And I'm the one with the Northwestern degree, right?
Yeah.
But you know how those changed, Ryan. It wasn't just about changing my life trajectory. All of us who had kids in our family, they all have gone to college, right? So that's that power of, a full ride scholarship in my case, and just changing where your life could be headed, right? And not that college is the answer, because there's a lot of great industries out there, that you can jump into. The trades. Boy, do we need people there, right? And you don't have to go $100,000 in debt to get that. And it's a great career, all right? But it was a game changer. So wrestling, how did it change my life? It changed mine and a lot of other people. So
yeah, when you think about the academics, were you always a straight A student? Or did wrestling propel you to do that?
Okay, so I asked Thorny, I'm like, okay, here's my GPA, here's my ACT. Do I get in now knowing that I could win a national title? And he's like, you don't have a chance. I didn't belong there then, Ryan. It was a stretch. I remember they wanted me to take the SAT, and I was still in, but hey, will you take it? And I'm like, sure. And then all of a sudden my coach goes, Dave Anderson goes, hey, do you want to go to the NCAA tournament in Iowa City? The same, and
this is 86.
What?
Is this 86? Yes. Yeah.
Now it's the same weekend as, my SAT test. I didn't go to the SAT test. I went to Iowa City. And I remember watching a future, he'd be a workout partner, but he graduated. Steve DiPietro get upset in the semis by the Flea, Brad Penrith, and, he came back and took third. And, but it was just seeing that atmosphere, seeing what was ahead for me in the future. It was great. And I'm glad I didn't take the SAT test. But to answer your question, no, I didn't belong at Northwestern. Hardest part is getting in. I knew I wasn't going to go into engineering. I knew I wasn't going to be a doctor, right? And but those places like Northwestern's, the Ivies, any school, you can get a great education. Just got to get down the right path, and I chose one. And I was in a school of education on the human development and social policy side of things, and loved it. Great experience. Got through. Met my wife. If I wanted to hang out with her, and she was a biomedical engineer, guess what I got to do? I got to study.
Yeah.
And so 26 years of marriage past. It's been a great ride, and Northwestern's done a lot of great things even outside of wrestling for me. So
yeah, and I want to talk about what you're doing now because it kind of reminds me of sales a little bit. But I just got to go back. 1986, for folks who don't know, is in Iowa City. Iowa wins it with only 5 All-Americans, or maybe it's either they only had 5 qualifiers or 5 All-Americans, but they all won or something crazy like that. Like they set the record or tied the record. What was it like in 86 at Carver?
Oh, it's just, a madhouse. That wasn't the year Dresser won it, was it? Did Dresser win it there?
I don't know.
Rico Ciparelli. Was Royce on that team? Did he play?
Yeah, Royce, I think won, I believe, but man, I just know that 86 was the 9th title for Iowa, because in 87, what's the wrestler?
The X on the singlet.
Yes. I'm totally embarrassed. I can't think of the wrestler from Iowa State who penned Penrith. Oh my God. In the Splato.
Illinois boy.
Yeah.
Oh, come on. Richards High School. Billy Kelly in the Splato. Yeah. The Splato.
So Penrith, doesn't get the title, but Iowa, the streak ends. Iowa State wins it. And then next year, Arizona State gets in there. So that 86 was like the last year before the collapse of the empire for a few brief years.
Right. Definitely. Yeah.
To be there as a high school senior must have been insane.
No, it was, it's next level, right? Just being there firsthand to go, wow, these guys can really wrestle. So it was opened my eyes and gave you something to train for sure.
And a lot of people from your era, they didn't have Flow or the internet, so they didn't see many college matches. Was that your first college match that you had watched?
No, I was blessed to, have the Midlands, right? So if you won a local tournament during the year, I forget what company, maybe ComDisco, someone tied to Northwestern, you'd get free tickets. And so I remember going up there my junior and senior year. In fact, it was my senior year. I'm sitting there with my dad watching. He loved wrestling, and he never wrestled, but he picked it up. And I was watching the finals and watching 118, obviously. And I'm like, I could be in the finals. And my dad didn't say anything, right? And the next year, my freshman year, I made it to the finals, and he handed me a note. And lost static, it's funny. I don't know why you get choked up, right? But just basically said, hey, you said you could be in the finals. You're in the finals. Go out there and win it, right? That's really cool. Unfortunately, I ran into El Palacio, and he had a single leg. I hit a cutback. He popped on top. I had a headlock. Threw him right to his back. He rolled me through it. That was 10 points right there. And I ended up getting tech fault in the finals. But it was pretty cool to say I could be there. And then I made it to the finals. And the biggest win was Geezy in the semifinals. That was huge win for me mentally. I got tech fault by him in the finals of the Northern Open. I had a sprained ankle. Again, not much I could do, but Eddie was just phenomenal, but won a close one there, and kind of spoiled his chance of wrestling Palacio, because I guess he lost in the semifinals the year before to him, that cost him his shot at a national title. And so I sort of played spoiler a little bit. So
wow. So did you redshirt that year?
No, I was a freshman. I wrestled 4 years straight.
Holy smoke. So the Midlands, how could I forget? For Illinois people, it's such a big tournament, and definitely back then, because you had the non-collegiates coming in quite a bit.
Woo. Yeah, just that it's tougher than a national tournament, right? Like some people didn't even get a shot. Some undergrads didn't get a shot at the finals ever, because you got Jim Shear coming back. You got Campbell, whoever, right, coming back, because it was okay then to go back and wrestle in Midlands, because you use that as a little bit of training before you went overseas in the winter, right? Before you went to Russia or Cuba or wherever you were going. So it was a bear. It was definitely a bear.
Oh my gosh. So you go as a senior, You say that to your dad. The next year you do it. But wrestling Ed Geesey, I mean, and I'm glad you mentioned him because this era for Illinois wrestling was one of the best, outside of maybe the mid 2000s or even that mid 90s. But this era where you're talking about, it kind of ended with Sean Bourmet, but it had Geesey, Ban Pastelnik. I mean, so many guys are in this era. Ben Morris went on to wrestle collegiately. I mean, talk about when you're going to these college tournaments, are you seeing old teammates from the IHSA days at all these college tournaments?
Yeah. Illinois is such a strong, as wrestling state, Ryan. We're up there with everybody. Right. And so, yeah, in fact, I think, my second match in college was against, Mike Irwin. I wrestled him in the sectional finals, I think my junior year or my senior year, whichever one. And I'm like, really? I'm going to the Ohio Open. I'm wrestling a kid from Illinois. I'm like, give me a break. Right. And it was fun, right? Because then you can root for your buddies, right? As long as you weren't wrestling against them. And it was just fun. You're just rooting them on to do big, great things. In fact, how about a crazy story, Ryan? I played golf at home at a country club, and all of a sudden a guy comes up to me. He's like, hey, Jack, do you remember me? I'm Mike Center. And I'm like, I did and I didn't, and he's like, I was wrestling for Miami of Ohio, unattached, couldn't have his coach in the corner. He goes, you were in my corner every match. And so that kind of speaks to what you said. I had to be reminded of it, but it was like, hey, that's an Illinois boy. He needs somebody. He was a different weight class, so I was able to jump in his corner and help him out. So yeah, I think we're a close knit group, and you want to do Illinois proud. And you always see what state had the most national champs and All Americans, and Illinois is right there, in the thick of things. So.
And Ed Geesey was one of the best coming from Illinois during that era. How much older was he than you?
A full 4 years. So he had graduated the year before my senior year in high school. And then, we just competed competitively against each other. And then I was blessed that he came back my senior year to be in my room full time and beat me up. And it helped a ton. He's a heck of a coach, man. That guy can coach. He's an amazing guy. And he helped me a ton.
What kind of mystique and toughness did Ed Geesey have? I mean, geez.
Well, I had a high school coach, Jack Doyle played. He was a football coach and wrestling coach. And we called Jack Super Bowl Jack because every day was a Super Bowl. And that's what Ed brought to the room, right? Like he couldn't turn it off, right? He was going to destroy whoever he had. And he just never backed down. And hey, I was competitive. I didn't like to lose in practice. So, we had some great battles in practice and getting after it. And, but every once in a while I'd be like, in my head, I didn't say it out loud, I'd be like, chill, Ed. I'm like, it's just practice. Right. But again, that's one thing I learned, it's an opportunity to get better, and you got to be on even when you don't want to be on and you're feeling a little sorry for yourself, that kind of thing. He brought that again, just helped with that mental toughness and focus. So he was great. I'm like, he pinned so many people, was so dangerous. He could have been Iowa Hawkeye. He lost. He got upset in the state finals. He got cradled and pinned, I think, his senior year, and Iowa dropped him, and he went to Minnesota. Now that was Iowa's fault and problem because I don't know what they had after him. It wasn't Geesey, I don't think. They had someone won one. I forget who was it. Glenn? Did Glenn win a title? Maybe
Glenn did. Paul Glenn.
Yeah, I don't know.
No, I don't think he ever did. But I know that one year he was the starter, and then Penrith got pulled in late in the year at the Iowa State duel. Might have been 87. Yeah, it was 87 because that was when Penrith got pulled in. But yeah, no, I mean, that's crazy. Iowa dropped Ed Geesey because he didn't win the finals.
Yeah, he was a 2-timer, would have been a 3-timer, and they dropped him.
Back then, a 3-timer was, man.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if freshmen could wrestle back then, but that is intense. And I
think so. I think they were able to. Yeah,
they were. Okay.
Yeah.
And so you wrestle him at the Midlands his home turf as well. But how did that match go? How'd you reverse it from a tech to a win?
Yeah, well, again, I think the sprained ankle in the semis didn't help me the first time around. But I mean, Ed was Ed, and it's still, I was disappointed, but I felt like I didn't give my best effort. And so, the more you let someone hang around, and it was a close match. He might have been up 2-1, and I don't know. I just remember the thing I remember was that maybe I was winning by 1, maybe it was tied, but he was cranking with his legs, and he was so good on top, and he was power half, and I thought he was going to break my neck. And ultimately I was able to, he slipped off and I was able to reverse him and then held on. I want to say it was 5-3. Heck of a match, big win for me, obviously. And
there's Pup.
that's Bailey, our friend's dog. Yeah, come on, get down, girl. It was just a huge win and momentum. And again, confidence builder. Oh, I got it. Remember I talked about just wrestling. So this is Midlands, my freshman year. I'm in the quarters and they're like, hey, you're wrestling the number 5 seed in the country from James Madison. Okay. I didn't know where James Madison was. And I thought they were messing with me. So I said, okay, yeah, right. Went out there, beat them by 8. I forget Peanut's real name. I go weigh in, check my weight, and people are like, hey, congrats, you just beat the 5th ranked kid in the country. I'm like, you were serious? I mean, had I thought it was or knew, I don't know what I would have done. But I, again, just wrestle. And I went out and ended up beating them. But that's that mental, part of it, just not overthinking it. And I'm just going to wrestle.
Wow. So that had to be such a highlight for a true freshman to make the finals of the Midlands. I mean, what did that do for your confidence going forward?
Yeah, it was great. Unfortunately, I mean, that helped me. I had a great freshman year. I was like 42-8. So that's back when you wrestled a lot of matches. And that just goes to show you I didn't win enough. I didn't make it to the finals enough. I had a lot of wrestle back wins that kept that win total going, but definitely helped, right? That confidence. I don't think, to be fair, my freshman year was my weight class was very strong, although it did have Weiland, who was at Michigan before he transferred, and he got beat by Eglin in the semis. I got the number 1 seed because I hadn't lost a duel, and I don't think I would have beat Weiland either, right? I ended up losing to him my junior year in the semis, and but it wasn't super tough, right? So I think that helped me a little bit, but I made the NCAA tournament, win my pigtail, and then get destroyed by a guy named Tim Wright of our little conversation earlier. As I told you, that it's the one time I never got pinned in high school and college in folk style, and I wanted to get pinned that match. It was that bad. I got teched before, right? By Geezy, by Palacio. Didn't feel that bad. It felt awful. He was a man child.
So Tim Wright, first 4-time champ ever, but it was in Division II, but it was before Pat Smith. So the first 4-timer ever, 2-time Illinois State champ, just a takedown wizard. And he's been on the podcast before. And, one of those guys that's you heard about a little bit growing up, but was probably 2 generations removed from me. So anyone after me probably doesn't know Tim Wright is in Illinois, which is a shame because he's unbelievable. And just talk about, he's the Division II wrestler. He must have won D2s, obviously he did. And then he's at D1s. And so did you know anything about like Tim Wright at that point or?
No, I just knew, I knew he was a bad hombre, right? I knew he was very talented. He was a huge 118-pounder. In fact, I think he missed weight a couple of times at D1s after winning D2s the week before or whatever that was. But just a lot of respect, knew he was tough. Was hoping I never had to wrestle him, but unfortunately I had to wrestle him once. So
how quick was he?
Oh my gosh. I couldn't do anything. Usually I could hang with someone a little bit for a little while. And there was from the shaking hands, I lost that too. Right. And it was crazy.
Well, in the next year you come back, win the Big Tens. And now I'm starting to look at some of the names in this bracket and it's like starting to be like the who's who of the 118 pounders. And especially when you get to nationals, you have Jack Kuvo, Corey Bays, Ken Chertow, Steve Martin, and Zeke Jones, obviously. So it's starting to heat up during the latter part of your career in terms of the names that are in those brackets.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I took second my sophomore year, lost in the finals to Keith Nix, who went on as a freshman to take second in the country, right? He lost to Kubo. What a talented kid. And then, like you said, those names are starting to appear. And then the next year I wrestled Nix in the finals again at Big Tens, and he had a single leg to start the period, and I cut him back and blew out his knee. His foot caught in the mat because he said I didn't do it. I didn't do anything illegal. It was a bad thing. And but then you just those names, right? And Doug Weiland was an animal, and so many good people. Never had to play. Loved watching Jimmy Martin. Like he was just a machine, right? Robotic baby face Jimmy Martin, right? I think is he a doctor now or? I'm not sure.
See, I always get them confused. Like you got Steve Martin and Jim Martin. I don't know if they're related. And then you had the one at Penn State who Brands used to wrestle. So and then you got the Grammy family.
Yeah, and then I wrestled Steve Martin all the time. We were 4-year nemesis. He was at Iowa when I was at Northwestern. In fact, after I upset him in the semis my junior year, he was ranked 1 or 2. Then I had to wrestle Nix in the finals, and he was ranked 1 or 2. But they're two different families for sure. Steve Martin of the Granby family out of Virginia, and he was a talented technician, Steve. But I loved watching Jimmy Martin. He was just.
And he was from Penn State, Jimmy Martin.
Yep. Him and Churchill. How about that 1-2 combo, right? I mean, they had some talent back then.
Those Penn State teams back then were tough. They were the first one to beat Gable at Carver.
Yeah, they were. I mean, they were loaded for bear, and I never understood why they went down. And I don't. Again, then Kel comes in and forget about it, right? Maybe I wish they were down again. But what a coach, what a program! It's just phenomenal. But I never knew why they were down. Still had talent, right? I'm like, they still had that great talent, just couldn't put it together. But
those are some great teams. And then, when you get to 1990 NCAAs, you're coming in 2-time Big Ten champ, returning All-American. What emotions are you feeling the start of the Nationals your senior year?
Yeah, I was excited. I'm gonna let this dog outside.
No problem. We can pause the recording too. So no big deal.
Yeah, why don't you go ahead or you can change it. It was. I was excited. I was, the anticipation was there. I wasn't undefeated. I think I lost to Schwab that year. And let me just say this, by the way. If Mark Schwab is healthy, there's a lot of people that don't have a national title, including myself, right? That was a game changer. And he was in my weight class, with still as dangerous as ever with a leg that he can't straighten out, right? But I'm
so glad you said that about Mark Schwab, because he's been on before, and one of the 4-time Iowa State champ. A lot of people say one of the best high school wrestlers ever. I mean, so is this at the end of his career or the beginning of his career?
Yeah, this is the end. I'm sorry. The when he's in my bracket. He was, what was he? A couple years older than at least a year. So he redshirted. I remember watching junior nationals, and I mean, what a phenom, right? He couldn't be touched. And
phenom.
Yeah, he was a phenom. I mean, no one could touch that guy. And, you can't control injuries, right? And he had a bad one, and it almost cost him his life, I thought. And but he came back and was still dangerous, right? And just an amazing wrestler. And I felt like I was ready for a title. Things had to go right. And the one thing that went right, Ryan, is I don't know to this day that I could have beat Doug Weiler. I lost to him the semis the year before and shot a double leg. He headlocked me to my back, and I'm like, please don't get pinned, right? And I got off my back, but that was the match, right? Like 7-2. Not a whole lot of action after that. I win a close one in the semis against a guy from Clemson, like 3-2. And then I look over and I see Gary McCall pull the upset of Doug. And I said, tournament's mine. That's not having wrestled ever McCall, not having to wrestle Zeke, and never beaten Zeke. But it was like over. And that's the way it turned out, and just an amazing ride.
And so Zeke beats Schwab in the semis.
Yep. And then I wrestled Gary McCall. And I remember first 30 seconds, I snap him and he drives me out of bounds. I'm like, uh-oh, that boy's big, right? He cut down from 126. And then I was fortunate enough. My coach, Tim Szynski, said he dreamed that I was going to hit a headlock and pin him. And then sure enough, I tied up, snapped his head, tightest headlock I ever had, and pinned him in like 1:20. And I was just like, are you kidding me? The Cinderella story keeps going. And on the way to the finals. So that was, who hits a headlock in the semis, right? But I used to hit a headlock on everyone I wrestle. I'm like, I'll give it a try. And that was a good try.
What was Coach Szynski like?
Oh, he was great. He was my, one of my workout partners for my first 3 years, assistant coach. He was the good cop versus the bad cop. And just motivational. We'd be killing each other in the practice room. Sorry, we're going to have to pause this again. I'm going to let the dog in.
No problem.
Sorry about that.
No problem at all.
Get in here, baby. So he just, we would have battles, Ryan, like the Johnny Jones, Zeke Jones's brother, right? Johnny was at Oklahoma State, had this great little tilt. And I don't know where I learned it from, but I do it all in high school. I was doing it all in college, and Timmy and I would just like, who could get it on who, right? And we're screaming when we get it. I'm like, He made practice fun. You know, to this day, he can still kick my butt, right? Well, he's in 10 times better shape than I am. And he's like 65, 66 years old. And it just phenomenal guy, phenomenal coach. And again, you know, when I went to Northwestern, I was the only 118 pounder. So we only had Alan Seeley James, only 26 pounder. We had Joey Bales at 134. And then Timmy. I'm I'm wrestling everybody big, right? Which turned out to be a blessing because when I got to wrestle 118 pounder, they seemed light.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I had to hit corners. I couldn't beat those guys head on. So that, you know, that lack of a room, lack of bodies in a way ended up helping me. Now, thankfully down the road, we got a little more reinforcements and some more bodies, but but Timmy was a big part of that. He'd be in that room just tearing people up.
And he was your coach. He became the head coach your senior year.
He did. Yeah. So I was his first ever national champ.
Wow. And he had been from Iowa, right?
Yeah, he was, you know, he took third, I think, his senior year. He's an Illinois boy at Glenbrook, North or South, and tough hombre. And he started those, I think, that chain of national championships. You know, I think that was one of his teams. So he was part of that 9 that they won in a row, and just a great guy.
Wow. And so you had him as the head coach, and then Giese was the assistant, and he was just training hard every day, I'm sure. And Cizeski was kind of running the overall show.
Yeah, that's it. And he would, you know, Timmy was a smart coach. He'd let Ed run the practice too, because, you know, you got his experience from Minnesota, and then his technique was, as I told you, is just phenomenal coach. You know, he's traveling the world and picking up stuff that helped. And so, you know, he was phenomenal. So he helped us all. Little weights, middle weights, and big weights, right? It didn't matter. He had great technique.
Yeah, and he went on to live at Foxcatcher for a number of years, and was a big Greco guy, right?
Oh no, it's freestyle. You know, just his nemesis was you know, Zeke, as was a lot of people's, right? He was you know, from 90 to probably from the late 80s to the 90s, he was always right there in the team picture, and then he just owned it, you know, from probably 90 on. You know, just amazing technician.
And you wrestled him in the finals of the NCAAs. Had you wrestled him before that?
Yeah, I had lost to him twice. I lost to him in the semifinal wrestlebacks as juniors, close match, maybe a 1-point match. And then I lost to him my senior year in the finals of Midlands, 5-3. I got into my seatbelt position. Couldn't do anything from it. He defended it very well. And so, yeah, that was a rematch from the Midlands finals. And I got on the right side of it this time with a great double leg to a seatbelt to a hip toss that, you know, gave me 5 that, you know, put him behind. And I think that was probably the difference right there.
Wow. And then, cause the score looked pretty big in the bracket. So
yeah, well, you know, it's 5-0. He escapes 5-1 after 1. And then second period, he escapes again, takes me down. It's 5-4 with 1:10 left. And I escaped, and then I was able to take another shot, hit a great single leg, catch the ankle, take him down, ride him out with 20 seconds to go. And all you can see, he just kind of shrugged. He's like, damn, right? All that energy you expend chasing and getting back. And all of a sudden it was, you know, it was an 8-4 or something like that. And then escape, a takedown and riding time made it a major decision, and pretty exciting. Yeah, it was a dream match, right? Everything went right for me. And when I won, I ended up clinching it for Oklahoma State. And there's a story in there where I was doing a lot of finger pointing after my freshman year, not a lot of thumb pointing, and I almost transferred to Oklahoma State. So there was something kind of ironic about me staying, which was 100% the right decision. It was about me not redshirting ultimately. And again, a lot of finger pointing, not enough thumb pointing. And I stayed and clinched it. So it was kind of cool that, you know, the Kendall Cross of the world and those guys talking to him, those guys. And so it was kind of fun to not only take 4th for my team, but help ultimately clinch it for Oklahoma. Got a big roar. I thought it was all about my match. I don't think it was. I think they knew it was, we're team champs, and they were pretty excited.
Because Arizona State was real tough back then.
Yeah, I think that's what knocked them out, right? They had 2 in the finals, them and St. John, and I think they needed to win both to have a chance. And so I didn't need Oklahoma State to lose. I don't know.
So you almost transferred out your freshman year?
Because I did. Yeah, I was just, you know, I wanted a redshirt. I thought, you know, I was small. If I could have another year, get bigger and stronger, that maybe I'd have a shot at a couple titles. And like I said, I was a little bit of a whiner, right? A little spoiled, and wanted my way. And I was told I was going to be able to redshirt, and it didn't happen. I didn't like that when I was kind of taken away. But ultimately, those life lessons, right? I realized it was about me, and I was being a little bit of a baby, and Northwestern, the end goal was that degree, right? And not that I couldn't have gotten a great degree at Oklahoma State, but it was, I was being a baby. Let's just put it out there. I was a baby.
What'd your folks say when you told them you were thinking about transferring?
Hey, they were all behind me, right? And ironically, I'm dating my future wife, and she was like, go, right? She was, we were boyfriend and girlfriend, and she's like, go, which I thought was pretty cool. She was behind me in my dreams as well. And it was big. And yeah, no, they were mad too, but ultimately I stayed and they were fine with it, right? Because they got to watch more than they would have if I went to Oklahoma State. So heck, I don't even know if I would have made the lineup, right? You never know.
Man,
tough guys.
Did you ever wrestle Corey Bays back then?
I did in the what's that tournament in Arizona, Sunkist Kids.
Yeah.
And I wrestled him twice. I beat him early in a great match, a lot of action, as you can imagine, with him being so dang fast. And then he wrestled back to the finals and he got me, beat me by 1 or 2. And it was a bummer because I think if you won, you got invited to, wrestle over in Russia. And that's where I was hoping to redshirt that year. And that's when they pulled it. And he went on to go on that, and I was a little bummed out. But boy, was he fun to watch. He came to Iowa City in 92 to train for the Olympic trials. He was sucking down a 105.5, and boy, I think that was a little too much for him. But it was a great workout partner, another piece in the pie.
He was in Iowa City.
Yeah, for a little while. Yeah.
Wow, I did not know that. Yeah, I interviewed him for the Smith audio documentary series we did. And he was right there with John during those years. And yeah, he's an awesome guy, business owner, really successful and just a really great guy. But yeah, when you said Oklahoma State, I was thinking of who would have been there. I'm like, it had to be Corey during those years. And
yeah. And
Eddie Woodburn
and then maybe Perlers were young. They came in and replaced him because
they were after that
2 or 3 years older than me. Yeah.
Yeah. Perlers were during, a lot of those like 90, 91, 92, 93 teams.
Yeah, I know one of them was in my bracket 90. I saw one of them in there. So
yeah, those were, man, how many studs during that time. And so before we let you go, I got to talk about you're moving to Iowa City. So you graduate from Northwestern. How did you end up going to the Hawkeye Club?
Yeah, I don't know where the connection was, but it was at the national tournament my senior year. And I was like, okay, where am I going? And Northwestern was like, I don't know that we can have you around coaching wise, club wise spots. And so it's like, where could I go? And then talking to one of the Iowa wrestling mat aides, and forgive me, I forget her name. But all of a sudden I'm getting to the semis and there's Gable, and he's like, hey, Gable, Jack wants to come here and train, for the Olympic stuff. And he's like, well, call me. Right. And I knew Mark Johnson, Illinois boy. Right. And so saw Mark as well. And so I started talking with him, and he's like, yeah, we'd love to have you. Right. And this is funny, right? I show up and I walk into the Hawkeye Carver. I'm rooming with Kevin Dresser's brother, Dan, lifelong friend, great guy. But who do I see? One of the first people, Steve Martin. His first words to me, what are you doing here? I'm like, how about that for a welcome? I'm like, I'm training for the Olympics. He's like, Yeah. I guess that's what happens when you compete with someone for 4 years. You're not, super close, but great guy. I saw him not too long ago before they dropped the program. I think it might've been at Midlands or a dual meet. And it was great seeing him and smiling, and, it's great. It's the thing about wrestling, right? Your enemies for 6 or 7 minutes on the mat, and then afterwards get over it yourself. I love telling the story. Steve was a little gruff, right? It's like, and I would, every tournament I saw him at, right? So I'm like, hi, Steve. Wouldn't say anything. Hi, Steve. 4 years straight, senior year. Hi, Steve. Hi, Jack. I'm like, yes. I broke him. I got him to say hi.
And so when you get to Iowa City, this is like the rebuild. So you got the Brands brothers, you got Chad Zappital, you got, I don't know if obviously Penrith was still there.
Yep.
Steve Martin. I don't know if Randy's still wrestling a little bit.
Randy's still there. Oh yeah. Who was there?
So you walk in, must have been like June of 90. You got, a year and a half, better part of 2 years to get ready for the Olympics. What's your first experience of the environment?
Yeah, it's just intense, right? I mean, you got a lot of people, the college athletes are training to win national titles. The Hawkeye Wrestling Club, you had a great group of people that, trying to fulfill lifelong dreams. You got Roy Salinger leading the crowd, right? And Rico was around, and just great. Lubu, Barry Davis, right? I'm like, Barry, I think he spotted me 12 points in like a 2-minute match, and he beat me. I'm like, it was just
that good,
incredible. I mean, it's just. I mean, if you couldn't get better in that environment, you had a problem, right? And again, talk about nowhere to hide, right? You're in those practices. That's when you didn't have to split practice, right? You got to train with the kids, and it didn't matter that it wasn't freestyle. You were just going hard because, I mean, it wasn't fun wrestling Zap, and at that point, Terry didn't want to wrestle me. He wanted to wrestle bigger guys, right? He was busy wrestling Tommy Ryan, getting his butt kicked, and just kept coming at him. It's just that wonderful intensity that you got to witness. And I think that's what it was. And I remember, Gable was so smart. He kind of let that team run the practices. He's like, they're good. They don't need much, right? I'll stay out of the way. And if something changes, I'll do it. But he was such the master of knowing when to push you and knowing when to back off, the team as well as individuals. And he was just an amazing guy. And I was just proud to be around him for 2 years and train. And hey, he was in my corner at the US Open when I wrestled in the finals and beat Chris Bolin. And that was a real thrill. I got a great picture with him. And
wow.
Yeah, that's one for the record books for sure.
So Zapatel's one of those guys where there's a story of legend that, he never won an NCAA title, and he had a Hawkeye tattoo on his chest. And then after he didn't get the NCAA title, he had like the tattoo removed. I mean, so there's like, that's one of those guys that easily could have been, one of the names we all know about. And a lot of people.
Yeah. And we should, right? Because what he did, I know he didn't win it, but oh my gosh, he's one of the elite in that era. And I remember I wrestled him in college, and I think he was a freshman. And I'm like, boy, and he was just a tough kid, right? I mean, I ended up beating him, but I'm like, boy, he didn't back down, just kept coming. And I was like, that kid's going to be great. And sure enough, he was, and fun to wrestle in practice, and just your heart goes out to him, right? I'm like, it was kind of like Dwayne Goldman all over again, right? Except he gets the happy ending, and poor Chad didn't. But I think it goes to show you, I hear he's hugely successful doing construction. I think he's living down south somewhere and kicking butt. And so, life's not fair sometimes, and you got to go through those tough times, and better things are to come. And I think, in the end, Ryan, he's a huge winner, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Shame on people who don't know who Chad Zappel is, because one of the best lightweights ever, I think, right? So
100%. And those teams were so tough.
Oh.
So you're probably going to the dual meet still, right? Watching at Carver.
Yeah, I'm going nuts. I adopted the Hawkeyes, right? I'm all in.
Oh my God. I mean, 91 might be one of the best teams ever. 92, a lot of the same guys. And then 93 is when, they did the Steiner Shuffle, and guys are starting to, brands had left. But I mean, what were the brands like back then? Were they just as intense as they are now?
Yeah, they just every day was on. I guess they were a couple of Super Bowl jacks as well, right? It was just their intensity that they brought to the practice room was incredible. But they're also, they were intense, but they're just great guys, right? Good guys to be around. You got outside the wrestling room, and I used to drive Terry crazy. I'd give him all these, like, what are they, brain twisters, and he wouldn't get the answer, and he'd be so mad and just start laughing. And it was good to see a kid like that laugh, right? Because you're like, you can't always be, so high stress. But that's just the way who Terry is, and Tom a little bit as well. And but just great hearted people, great coaches, but boy, it's. You're glad you're on their side. Let's just put it that way.
Man.
And I was. So.
And you must have been there for that epic match between Pat Smith and Tom Ryan at Carver in 1991. Oh my God. What a match.
The timeout.
Yes.
Oh, it's just, no, for sure. Just craziness. Yeah.
Ryland pinning.
The neck wrench. Are you kidding me?
Jeez. What, I mean, great times, Zach. And we could talk about this stuff all day. I know you're out on a little bit of vacation out, so we'll let you go. The last thing we'll wind down with is you've been at Northwestern since after 92. You come back, do some coaching, and you've been in the fundraising side of things for a long time. Just looking at your LinkedIn, and incredible success, the 28 million or so that you've raised. I just want to ask one thing. As a salesperson, I'm curious about this stuff. What's some of the things you've learned about, like, relationship building with some of these ultra high end people that you're going to and approaching for donations? What are some of the things you've learned in that realm?
Yeah, it's when I made the switch from coaching to fundraising, and I tell donors this all the time. I go, they figured I'd be good at twisting arms in different ways, and most of them laugh. I would tell you that, but really, it's about people, right, and relationships, and being you, right. And I'm pretty confident in being me. I can't be anybody else. I'm not a fake it till you make it guy, and you just get to know people and you build some trust, and you do your homework on what someone can do and find out what their interests are, and just you build that relationship. So in fundraising, Ryan, if someone doesn't know the ask is coming, you failed, right? I'm like, if someone's genuinely surprised, because I'm charged with bringing gifts of $100,000 to several $1 million, right? It's not pocket change, and it's big. So, if I get no plenty of times, right? And I don't mind asking, hey, can you help me understand? Why the no, right? What do you mean by no? Is it right now? Is it the project? Is it the timing? And I'm not trying to sell them again. I want to know, did I miss, right? It's going back to, did you do your homework? Did I make a mistake somewhere? And by doing that follow-up and asking it respectfully, some people, like I had one guy tell me no to $125,000, and I'm like, hey, did I screw up? What did I do wrong? Like, well, he's like, no, you're spot on. He goes, timing. He's like, I need a couple more years. I'm like, oh, okay. And Charles, a couple years later did it. And
Wow.
It's about people. The neat part about the world, you don't have to be an extrovert to be a great fundraiser. Introverts are they just come at it a different way. They're quite successful. But I'm a people person. I'm Irish, right? We like to talk. There's a lot of great people out there in the wrestling world, Ryan. And I know Bill McKenna helped make us, get us connected. He's got a lot of respect for you and what you're doing. And, watching a lot of these, you're doing amazing work. But there's a guy who, his son went to Northwestern, and he's supported us greatly. And, he wasn't a big time wrestler, right? And he's not a Northwestern guy, but he's a wrestling guy. And him and Gary Sagway helped our Wildcat Wrestling Club immensely. They helped the Hawkeye Wrestling Club. And there are those people in that wrestling community. The cult is strong, right? And there's a lot of great people who know that their dreams were fulfilled by people that they didn't even know. And so those folks, I owe them a debt of gratitude. When I got into fundraising, I don't think I quite understood who helped me get there on my journey. I knew my coaches, I knew my training partners, but then when I got into fundraising, I'm like, wow, I owe a lot of people thanks. And so my getting into fundraising was my way to give back to Northwestern, right? I got a full ride. I got to pay that back. I may not be able to give millions, but if I can raise it for the university and for athletics specifically, and wrestling even more specifically, that's a win. And so, there's a lot of amazing people out there. And I've gotten to know a lot of them. They become dear friends. I'm not afraid to ask my friends for money. So whoever watches this, be aware, put your wallet away maybe. But it's been a great career for a guy who just stumbled into it, Ryan, and just trying to give back any way I can.
So a couple things. Bill McKenna, we love you. You're the man. Love
Amen.
Bill McKenna. He's awesome. But you said something that is so valuable. Two things, really. One, you don't have to be an extrovert. And I'm preaching the good word of people going into sales all the time, because I think it's one of the best careers where, the harder you work, the more you can make. You don't need to be an extrovert to be in sales by any means. I think that's one of the craziest misconceptions. And in fact, I'm a little jealous of the introverts, because they seem to have the details in order a little bit more than I do.
Yeah, right?
I'm big picture. I'm missing details left and right. Whereas those guys are on it, and girls. The other thing though is, man, when someone says no, it's so easy just to get off the phone and you go ahead and ask them why they say no. I love that.
Yeah, you have to, right? And just, you want to know if you're on the right path or not. And even more importantly, when you're asking, it's not being afraid to, sorry about that.
No worries. We're about done here.
Not afraid to, just kind of find out more of the information you need. Right. And so, but those no's, you need to know why, because maybe something that you're like, we get in our way a lot, Ryan, right? In sales, so I'm asking someone for $100,000. They got 2 kids in college. It's easy for me to say, that's not going to work. And I've hired a bunch of people, and I watch them and I go, you need to let them say no.
Don't
right?
assume.
We need to ask. I'm like, we don't know what their family history is. They may be related to, Buffett, I'm like, so let them say no. You're probably right, but let them say no. And so it's those little things. And again, you build that through relationship building and respect and doing what you need to do. So it's good stuff.
Awesome. Jack Griffin, it's been an honor to have you. Last question for everyone is, how did wrestling change your life? We'll sign off with that, sir.
Yeah, no, I think I must have touched upon it earlier. It got me a 4-year degree at Northwestern, changed my path, changed my kids' paths. And it was a huge game changer. So blessed. And all the people I've gotten to meet in this crazy wrestling world has been a blessing. So that's it.
It's been great to have you, man. Thank you so much, Jack. Enjoy your day, sir.
Thanks, Ryan. Take care.
Thank you for listening to this episode with Jack Griffin. If you want to support the show, please go to SpartanCombat.com to place your custom team apparel order. To listen to past interviews, go to WrestlingChangeMyLife.com. ChangeMyLife.com. 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 ChangeMyLife.com.